Hi, this is, I'm Janet Fitch, and this is Writing Wednesday, where I answer your writing questions, craft questions, psychological questions, philosophical questions, everything about writing happens here. Um, and so if you have questions for me today, you can put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to uh, talk to you about them. And if you have questions for me in between Writing Wednesdays, which is most of the week, uh, you can send them to me through my website, janetfitchwrites.com. And I do this every Wednesday, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and everything in between. Um, and just hoping to help you with your writing problems. When I was a young writer, I, certainly had nobody to ask. I didn't know anybody. I was working as a typesetter in the Pacific Northwest and just had to slug away at it. So my uh, this is my gift to you. So uh, welcome to Writing Wednesday. I have a question today that I thought I would talk about, um, which is character orchestration. And this is coming up because I am working on rewrites of a book that it was suggested to me that I needed another point of view character. I have two, and it was suggested to me that I could really use a third, hi Amy, a third point of view character who had not been in the original book. And this comes up periodically, that you have to add a character um, that you hadn't planned on, or you have to add a character um, that does something in particular for your book, but it's not did not come up organically the way the rest of the characters did. And so character orchestration becomes an issue. So I have a character now. I have two characters who are really well matched, protagonist, antagonist, really well matched. Now I'm looking at adding a third character, and how will this character sit with the other characters? What is the calibration of this character? How do you decide who that character is going to be? Normally you sort of know who your protagonist and antagonist are when you start. Um, Although sometimes add, you flip it. I've certainly had a book that started off, hi Jill, that started off with the antagonist as the protagonist. And once I developed a different protagonist, which was White Oleander, um, the orchestration, what is the right character? And because I was just starting it, I could let that unfold and really feel like who would Ingrid Magnusson's daughter be? There's a very strong, very peculiar, very intellectual, poetic, demanding, self-centered kind of person. What is their child like? Um, so in the current one, I have a pair of characters, antagonist and protagonist, and adding a third character at this point takes a lot of thinking, rethinking, trying out, fail, try out, fail, um, because they have to fit into the story, but they can't overwhelm the story because I already have the story. I already have those people and their conflict, and I know their personalities. And I try, and I created a third character, as my purpose is to do. And she was she was too strong. She was too strong, and she overwhelmed the dish. It's like cooking. You know, you cook and then you want to add um, another flavor to the dish. It needs another flavor. You know, it needs another flavor. Um, but you know, if you can add pepper and it accents, or you can add pepper and you no longer taste that dish, or you add a flavor that overwhelms what you've got. And then all you've got is that over-scented dish that you could then throw out or make people eat or figure out how to fix. Or um, and I had come up with a character that I really liked, somebody really interesting, but a wee bit too interesting for a what is really to be a secondary character, a little too interesting. And so I had to kill this character. There's no way that I'm going to allow a new character to overwhelm my book that I already have. The new character has to accent what's there without overwhelming. So back I go. And who is a character who is less forceful, a little less interesting, although the character has to be interesting enough, if it's a point of view character, that the reader will be interested in reading them as well as the other characters. They can't be just, sitting there with their finger up their nose, because who wants to read any of that, even if it's, total of 50 pages of them throughout the book. Um, you have to have characters who are interesting enough that the reader will want to see what they're thinking, their attitude, their take. You have to develop like why they are the way they are. So you're developing a whole backstory for them, um, as you do for any major character. But that's that extra element that they have to play well with others is what we're going to talk about today. Character orchestration. And it's something every writer has to deal with, but is usually done very um, unconsciously. You do it instinctive. I would do it instinctively, uh, birthing a group of characters together. Um, so it's like thinking about the whole dish that you're making and not fixating on too many of the ingredients. You don't want to take away, like I was finding myself giving that really super interesting character some of my protagonist's thoughts and lines. And it's like, no, I don't want to take away from my protagonist to have this third character come in. It has to be, it all has to be of interest, but the central story remains the central story. And this other character's an accent note only. Uh, so I wanted to read something from a book that is basically it's written to for people who are writing comedy. So this is my husband's book, Comedy Writer, um, which is I'm not, this is not comedy, but he has an exercise in this that so speaks to the issue of character orchestration. He's talking about putting together a cast of characters for um, a situation comedy, for sitcom. This book deals with all different kinds of comedy writing, and one of them is the sitcom. So he's always looking for a group of characters that you can live with for years. If a sitcom goes, you're going to be dealing with that cohort of characters and how they play off of each other. Think of sitcoms. Um, and he has an exercise. That's why I'm bringing it up. he has an exercise in it that is such a good exercise for thinking about character orchestration and how characters play against each other. It's a chapter called um, The Character Palette. So he calls it a palette, and I call it just character orchestration. But because he's creating a group of characters who are going to be interacting over time. Hi, sorry. Eke, sorry. What books would you prefer to learn writing a novel? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. This is a wonderful book for a lot of the exercises are really anybody writing fiction would benefit from getting a hold of this book. But the character palette, what he, the exercise that he does in here to think about the range of characters and how they play against each other. We've talked about the 3D character study, so you have a good sense of you want a variety of gender, sexuality, ethnicity, disability, mental state, intelligence, political leanings, superstitions, etc. When you're creating a group of characters like this, it's a constellation. But any novel is going to have a constellation of characters too. They just don't all interact on sitting on a couch in a sitcom, where they all sit in the living room on the couch and then they have that interaction. But the greatest, so he talks about having, like, if you have a put down artist, this is comedy, you have a put down artist. Do you have characters that provoke her to put people down? So, it's like he talks about Cheers, a TV American television show, um, where there's a put down artist, Carla. Uh, so there's two people that is three people, four people, five people that she can have that are irritating in certain ways. So there's a pretentious character, Diane. There's a drunk Norm. There's a dim-witted guy, Woody. There's a jock, Sam, and there's a pretentious guy, Cliff. So that keeps her going. You need, if somebody has one trait, then how is that supported or interacted with in the character palette that you create? So he talks a lot about different choices of sitcoms and how the character palette works. Um, it's called Comedy Writer by Andrew Nichols, a guide to creating comedy for print, TV, and stage. Um, and he is my husband, so that's, you know, it's not to say that he's any less brilliant because he's married, because we're married. But he's got wonderful exercises in it, and that's the thing that I want to talk about today is this great exercise he calls 10 guests at a party. So what you do is you make a list of 10 guests at a party. This is a fantastic exercise for novelists as well as, or fiction writers, as well as people who want to write comedy in particular. Um, so you make a list of 10 guests at a party, adding one person at a time. So first you figure out who your host is. So you decide, are they male or female? Are they young, middle-aged, or old? What's their job? What are they looking forward to the party, or are they anxious? What is the party celebrating? So is it set in a town or a city or in the country, apartment or house? So you figure out your situation as well as the who of the host. Then you start adding guests. So the first guest is the one who gets there early. The first guest is early. So why? Why are they early? Who comes early to a party? Are they the best friend who is bringing food and booze and setting up the bar? Um, or are they just tactless? Are they, the person who always is anxious to be on time and they show up early and you get your hands full to deal with them? Um, then but the person um, presents a small problem for the host, whatever it is, you figure it out. Um, then the second guest arrives. So the second guest is coming from another party. And then you get to decide, do they know the first guest? Are they the same gender, opposite gender, talkative? Is it relaxed or awkward? Add that second guest and figure out who that person is. Then you need a third guest. And the third guest promised to provide the entertainment. So you figure out, and something's going to go wrong with the entertainment later. So what is going to go wrong with it? So what's the entertainment? What's going to go wrong with it? And so you're looking for a balance: gender, age, ethnicity, anybody from out of state in these first four people. So the third guest. Then the fifth, someone arrives, is who, when they talk, is not clearly understood. Yeah, it's very fun. GB, this is a really good one. So someone arrives who, when they talk, is not clearly understood. So are they foreign speaker? Do they have laryngitis? Are they mumbler? Did they take a sedative that is having a more of an effect than they thought it would? So you have somebody who is not a clear speaker. Then someone arrives who is seriously crushing on someone else at the party. So you're developing this are 10 guests, and they're gonna, the 10 people at a party, and you're seeing how they are going to relate to each other. So figure this seventh person has a serious crush on someone, and decide, has it been going a long time? Does the other guest know? Is it embarrassing? And that now someone is going to cause a disagreement or commotion later on, but we start to suspect it now. And who is that going to be of these different people? Now there's a family member. Add a family member, someone else at the party who wasn't invited. So you have the crasher. And how much tension is there going to be over this person? Is it just going to be one of those things? Are they going to, do they try to fit in? Does it work? Do they try to make themselves useful? Then number 8, a detective arrives to keep an eye on someone at the party. So who is it? What did that person do? Are they capable of doing it? Now someone's getting a little drunk. Now, who is that? And how are they getting drunk? Are they weepy? Are they sloppy? Are they funny? Are they doing, juggling things and breaking them? Someone voices a strange opinion. Does someone insult them? And then how is the host keeping busy? What is the host up to? 9, the 9th guest owes the host money. So what qualities does that person have? Why are they late? What's the excuse of not paying the host back? And then Someone shows up who the audience loves. So, audience, someone shows up that you love, that you're enjoying. Um, so, are they shallow? Are they, why are they beloved? And then the 10th person upsets or shocks more than one of the partiers. So, what's up? Someone has a secret. Do they tell or not? Which one of them has a secret? Two people start an argument over what? Have they argued before? Um, Make sure you have the good gender mix. Someone doesn't like the entertainment that the third guest brings. Somebody doesn't like it, thinks they're a shitty singer or bad guitar player or something like that. Um, so they think they should do it, and maybe they're terrible. Um, Someone's too picky to eat the food. Who is it? Um, they brought their own. Uh, Somebody's a world traveler and it starts telling a story about Kathmandu, and are they have they really been there, or are they lying? Um, so now you have this whole group of people, and um, then part of the exercise, if you can do this, is the network says cut 3 characters. So who haven't you used much as you've developed this scene? Who are you going to cut? You have to cut 500 pages out of your novel. Who are you going to cut? I just tore 4 people out of my novel. It still lies bleeding. Um, so the idea is, um, if somebody spends the whole time on their phone, that's somebody you can cut. If people, if you have to, if you have to cut, who are you going to cut? So it gives you an idea of how to, who is contributing what to, in this case, to the scene. In your novel, it's like, who did I cut? I had 4 characters that were interesting in themselves, but they didn't do much for the forward movement of the novel, considering the amount of time that I gave them. Maybe I gave one of the characters maybe 4 chapters, an interesting interaction, but his main purpose was professional. So all of that personal stuff was really tangential. So out he came, 4 chapters gone. It's kind of a mess, but it's like basting a dress back together. You take really big stitches just loosely attached, and then it's like, not those sleeves. They just come off, and a lot of your novel can just come apart like that. Um, and then you're looking for stuff that ties it more closely together. Um, this is also excellent for planning, brainstorming an intended party scene in a novel. Yes, absolutely, Sarah says, as opposed to using exclusively as an exercise. Yeah, every exercise can be used, for the actual scene. Um, the party scene is really getting used to thinking of your palette of characters. If I have my novel was fairly focused, largely 2 characters, and then there are a bunch of secondaries. And then to add a secondary that has more to do with those 3 rather than only has to do with this one. That's the ones that get cut. The ones that they only have to do with this one, or they only have to do with this one. easier to cut. The character I'm adding will have stuff to do with both of them. So we want some, like I have my those two characters. um, Meredith Diamond Dove says, cut the person who thinks they're a better entertainer. Yeah, maybe. Uh, and GB says, at the party, it becomes too wild. Someone pulls out a 9mm and starts firing at the ceiling. The cops come, things quiet down, the characters get cut by being dragged out by the cops. Gone 5 or shot. I think when the Glock comes out, um, several of the characters will just head for the door. Thanks for the party. Your college roommate is out of control here. Um, yeah, you put your characters in a. If I have 3 characters and they're in a scene together, who does the talking? Who interrupts? Who mumbles under their breath? Who wishes that they could split? Who is surprised? Who is controlling? Who is more of a watcher? Who's a good listener? Who's hearing what's going on? Who's putting pressure on who? Because conflict is what scenes are all about. This party scene is going to have tons of conflict. But with my characters, it's like I have that third character is going to be has to be more different from the protagonist and antagonist than I had originally thought. I've taken two runs at her, maybe 3, and in each case, not right, not right, not right. I tend to go for dramatic characters, but the 2 are so dramatic that I need to pull back on that third. And then how to make an interesting third character that is more, not reclusive, but more muted, while not losing the reader during her sections. So I'm still in process. I'm still approaching and then, trying to find that good combination of characters. Let's see. Yeah, improv. Sarah says it sounds like an improv exercise. And I think improv, a lot of the tools that actors use are good for training the novelist, training the fiction writer. Because isn't all writing improvisation on some level? Except we can redo it. We can go back and edit it as opposed to improv where you're just it is what it is in the moment, and then you're creating in the moment and it stays in the moment. A good book, aside from Comedy Writer, which I highly recommend, is a book called Free Play by Stephen Nachmanovitch. And it's called Free Play, Improvisation in Art and in Life. And Stephen Nachmanovitch is an improvisational jazz player. I think he's a violinist. So it's improvisational jazz is all about listening to the other players, picking up on something that they've done, and you come in as well. And eventually things start as improvisation and later become standards. You can't even imagine how how that was created. It's always an improvisation, and but it's always thinking about how characters play off of each other in that palette. There's a color that I need in that palette, and I haven't quite found it. And coming in very late, um, when the thing is starting to, you want to do it before it sets up. You pour the cement, and you know you have some time while it's still wet that you can still move stuff around, um, and getting the character feeling for that distance, that flavor. If you're a cook, that, which I'm not, that flavor that's not going to overwhelm, that's going to add that spice, um, add to the complexity of that dish without, it's like you don't want, it's like too much cinnamon. All I can taste is cinnamon, uh, and you just ruined your dish, you Um, so GB says maybe your third character brings something to the story, physical, which appeals to one of the what, where, why the other character detests or hates. That is a really interesting idea, which I'm taking under advisement. As I do, it's still very open. So, that that sounds interesting, you know? So she has a quality, appeals to one, but not the other. Huh, that's cool. Very cool. I didn't mean to make this a problem solving about my book, but I like to use when I'm in the when I'm in the welter of decision making and working on my book. I always figure any problem that anybody has, more than one person's going to have it. So even if it's a problem I'm having, there's going to be somebody here who's going to have the same problem or similar. Anybody having character orchestration problems? You know, there's something that I saw when I used to review books for a magazine back in the 90s, 80s, very stylish. And I used to do new and recommended books, 6 to 8 every 2 months. And you have to read a lot of books to find 8 books that you can recommend, that I can recommend. And I started noticing similar problems in a lot of the books I was rejecting. And one of them was what I call multiple protagonist problem, where they have the same character in like 3 or 4 different guises, and it's the same person basically, except this one's a cop and this one's a surfer and this one's a photographer, but they all have the same basic problem. And I don't need 3 characters with the same basic problem. Cut 2 and just give us the one. So Meredith says, if a story happens in a public place or group setting, how many characters should you keep it narrowed down to? Can you have cameo characters show up but not be essential, or if it's too distracting? And this would be a novel, not a short story. I It depends on how good you are at the multi-character dialogue scene. My teacher, Kate Braverman, felt that she was not particularly good at a multiple character dialogue scene. She wasn't good in crowd. She wasn't good with a group of people. She liked that intensity of a one-on-one. So she would always try to avoid the group scene. It's a lot more work and a lot of balls in the air, as you'll notice when you try to do the character palette, the 10 guest exercise. Um, so I have seen fabulous work in a multi-character dialogue scene in a bar. I told you about, I've talked about Denise Nicholas's book Freshwater Road, about the Freedom Summer in Mississippi, registering people to vote in the civil rights movement. And there is a scene, chapter 2, I believe, of Freshwater Road, um, of people in a bar. I think there's 8. There might be 8 or 9 characters in that bar. And I'm telling you, every character has a point of view. Every character has their issue that they're talking about from their side. And alliances form, and there's kind of 2 groups of opinion about, they're talking about Freedom Summer, whether you should go, whether you shouldn't go, what are the hopes. They bring up history of, they're in Detroit, they bring up history of Detroit, they bring up Emmett Till, they bring up, and then personal stuff. There is a protagonist in the scene, the bar owner, and then his personal stuff starts to link up to the social issue. I mean, it's a brilliantly done chapter. 8 people, 9 people. Um, but I think, of course you can have cameo characters walking on, the person at the ice cream shop, you know, has something to say, or somebody standing in line at the market has something to say. Um, but how many characters can you get away with? It, you can always cut it down to 2 people, even at a party. People who are not speaking are not characters. It's in a dialogue scene. Um, People who are not speaking are landscape. So you can have a bunch of people at a party and 2 people are talking at the bar. It's a 2-person scene, even if there's 20 people there. It's when they're all talking. So you have to decide, um, how many plates can you put in the air. I think doing the adding guests to the party will be an interesting exercise for you. Ask yourself, how many can you keep absorbing all these people? Can you do it? See what it's like, because they all have to be different. They speak differently. They have different issues, you know, um, and they all contribute their flavor to the mix. Um, I think that you can certainly have cameo characters show up. Um, but if you pay too much attention to them, then people expect that they're going to continue. So you might have to cut them back a little bit. Um, I find when I name a character, it we're expecting more from them than the woman in red asks, blah, blah, blah. But if I give her a name, we expect her to continue and reappear. So think about how you control people's expectation. I had a named character, one of the characters I tore out of this is a lawyer. And he had a lot bigger part, and I knew who he was and how he knew all these, knew the 2 central characters, and he wanted certain things, and he had passed with them, um, and it just, I needed to cut somebody, like the network saying you got to cut 3 characters. I had to cut uh, quite a few pages out of, just this unwieldy book that I'm working on, and I tore him out, but I still needed that law. I needed a lawyer. So instead of having this fully developed secondary character, I just have the lawyer. And I was able to get rid of 4 chapters by doing that. It was really really helpful. Um, so GB says a movie which had many characters was Nashville by Robert Altman. Yeah. Books with, you know, like think about books that have really good multi-character scenes. You'll see really great orchestration. Um, Robert Stone, I often use his short story, and there's a collection, Bear like Bear, and his daughter. And there's a short story in there, Porque no tiene porque la falta, with four characters. And they have really good, the orchestration is just fantastic. It's a guy and his wife, and these menacing guys that they've known for a long time. They're expats in Mexico, and these two guys they know really well. One's a dealer, and the other is his buddy, and they're the buddies on meth. And it's it's a very intense situation of four characters. The orchestration is really good. Who else do you like in the multiple scenes with multiple characters in books that you've read? Um, Hemingway does multiple character scenes. There's always a group of people going somewhere. Fitzgerald, there are groups of people in Fitzgerald. Uh, who else does that really well? You guys are so well read. I know that you're going to think of people right away. Um, who's known for that? It's interesting, there's certain eras where groups are, the literary mind is more interested in groups, families, you know, Joyce. Look at those short stories in The Dubliners. Um, he grew up in a big family, and there were a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins, you know. And so people who grew up in those kind of families often feel very comfortable writing about groups of people, because people are always interrupting you, and somebody's telling a story and then a fight breaks out. And um, people who tend to have grown up in smaller families or less extended families tend to have a harder time with groups. Um, Especially groups everybody has to play a part, you know. Um, I'm thinking of T.C. Boyle's book, uh, Drop City, which was comedic. Um, Part of it takes place on a hippie commune in the Redwood country in California. And so there are a number of people who uh, have their opinions. GB says the Grapes of Wrath group, that's a family and extended, you know, the people that they come in contact with as they are moving across the country and working in the fields. Godfather by Puzo, big Italian family. So, you know, is this, say, a person in New York in their apartment by themselves, you know, might interact with a group of people at dinner or at a bar or something like that, but there'll be more one-on-ones, you know, whereas somebody, you know, in a area or a situation where they interact with a big family group, that makes more sense. Um, I do have, let's see, do I have a big group scene in this book? I do. I have a scene, I have to say, I can only think of one or two. Um, I mean, there's scenes with other people, but where the action tends to be focused. I have one that's a group scene where everybody's discussing an issue and putting forth their own ideas, and they all have their own kind of agenda going on, interpersonal agenda, as well as the issue that they're discussing. Maybe I should have another one. Maybe I'll do this exercise as well. Um, so anyway, we have. Uh, Anybody have any other questions while I'm going to wrap this up? But I do recommend the exercise, the character palette from Andrew Nichols's book Comedy Writer. Uh, and I do recommend uh, Stephen Nachmanovich, free free play improvisation in art and in life. And GB says, do you have a favorite novel writing software? I use Word as my novel writing software. Uh, Sarah says, does Andrew's book have many more exercises? Yeah, every point that he makes, major point, he'll have an exercise that goes with it. He was teaching at Davis, um, and so this is basically his writing class. Um, and a favorite novel writing software. I have used Scrivener. I like Scrivener for the first draft, but I find I need Word once the novel gets going. I do have my research on Scrivener because it's always open. You never have to open anything on Scrivener. You just go to Scrivener and you click and it's open, it's open, it's open. So I keep all of my research there, and I still do. But Word is what I use. I don't use any novel writing software as far as like AI or something that writes for you. You know, what is a novel writing software? Something that writes for you? I can't even picture what that might be. Do you, have you heard of any? Um, I'm pretty, not really looking for a magic bullet, you know. I'm kind of more on the blood, sweat, and tears side of things. Is there novel writing software? I can't even picture what that would be. Um, there's several out there now. Like what? Do they write for you? Is it AI? Is it, you know, like I want to write a tragedy, like Euripides, so write it for me. I mean, that kind of thing, or it's hard to picture how that would work. I mean, is it involved in content or is it, more of a formula? Like, 20 pages in, you need to have something like that. Scrivener. Yeah, Scrivener is great. I do enjoy having my research there. What I don't like is you can't, it's harder to send. I have to put it in Word to send it anywhere. Um, yeah, bring the names next time or send them to me through my website, janetfitchwrites.com. Uh, I'd love to hear, although I don't like reliance on that kind of thing. I think the closer you can get to a pad of paper and a pen, the better. Um, I mean, I use a computer. I love the computer. I love the flexibility of cut and paste because some of you remember the time when you had to literally cut. Like if you're getting rid of that, you cut it and then you tape it together so there are pages that like this and pages like this, and it's this big messy thing, and then you have to retype it. That's the way I came up. Um, so I love a word processor, love computer, but anything that tends to homogenize writing, I'm against. Anything that formats, that says now you need a climax or well, now you should do this, all that formulaic stuff, anything formulaic, anything that's going to homogenize your writing is bad. As far, I know people are using AI for writing all kinds of stuff now. But fiction should be sacrosanct, because whatever it's doing, it's going to homogenize your writing, and you're going to lose that flavor of yourself, you know. Uh, and that's what the reader wants, is that smell of that unique voice, that unique texture that will be abraded by using a computer. I don't want to see that. Um, so Meredith Diamond Dove says, I use a Google Drive because it saves your work in real time. Oh, that is perfectly understandable. It changes your work, and it saves your work in real time, and you can change devices and have access. Makes super good sense. Um, about the pipeline, which I wrote in the 70s, typed on a real typewriter. Yeah. Ugh, I hated the typewriter. Oh, God, my hands pounding away at that thing. People are nostalgic about typewriters, but I just remember how, screwed up my hands would be. Um, that I like the softer touch for sure. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. And definitely send me questions for next week. I would be happy to answer anything. So thank you for coming, and good writing.